Hello.
Hello AOS fans!
It's the Agents of Embergard.
And in this video we're looking at the brand new Warband,
The Knives of the Crone.
the Knives of the Crone, the closest we've had to the Eyes of the Nine
Yeah.
since the Eyes of the Nine.
The Eyes of the Crone, the
Yeah.
Knives of the Eyes.
Exactly, the Eyes of the Crone. And yeah, the Knives of the Crone, they are a new, and we knew they were coming, or they've been heavily rumoured, Warband.
Before we dive into the really crunchy stats on all of it and what the War Scroll and everything does, we want to give you a quick overview of just the models in general. How are they to build, Robin?
Well, as we know, I'm not very good at building models, and I didn't really enjoy building these.
That doesn't surprise me looking at them.
No, they've got some horrible joins. I think I had to scrape out every peg hole.
Ugh.
I think these. I remember. I've kind of forgotten. I should have taken some notes, but yes, they weren't very much fun. And I think all of the pegs were too wide for the hole.
Cue 100 comments below
Yeah.
talking about snip all the pegs off.
Yeah,
always
I
snip
know.
the
I
pegs
always
off.
feel like I should, but when I'm building, I hate doing that in case I do it wrong.
Yeah.
That's the first thing.
Yeah.
And secondly, I always feel like not everybody knows to snip the pegs off, and therefore I should try and build them without
Yeah,
snipping the pegs off.
it's true,
And yet
it's
when I get halfway through it, I'm like, I really should have snipped the pegs off. But when they're when they're half done and the pegs are in, I don't want to take them apart. I don't want to take them apart because I might break them.
Yeah, and I think because they're thinner models, they're more spindly models, that means that those connections, if they're not quite right, are going to show up even more and look even worse. Whereas you've got some bigger models and they don't necessarily matter quite so much.
Yeah, I mean, once I've painted them, I don't tend to see that.
No, it's not quite so bad.
The models themselves, they're one of the weaker warbands on look and feel. Kaona, the leader, she actually looks a lot better than she does in the photo.
The angle of the photos is really bad, but I can see why they've done it, because they need the person looking more at the camera.
She looks quite impressive on the stairs, even though she's just kind of standing there with her hand out and a knife in the air.
The knife's actually bigger than it looks on the model because of the angle she's holding out, but I'm still not sure what's going on with this hand. It's just like she's like, I'm a spooky
She's lost her puppet.
Yeah, she's like, where's the marionette gone? It's a bit like that.
So yeah, I'm not a big fan of them. Certainly of the Embergard warbands, they're my least favourite so far.
One of them looks like Angus Young strutting across the stage with his guitar.
100%.
The one on the tactical Rawk looks like she's just sort of going, I'm a bird, I'm a bird. And again, not particularly. And Batman. Or Batgirl, Batwoman, I don't know. And the last one, the crossbow one, is just kind of like he's sort of perching half on a rock. And
he's all right. His pose is all right, but it's very standard.
It's a very basic crossbow wielder's pose. So So overall, the models, the assembly, the general, I mean, detail-wise, I don't even think they're that particularly detailed in comparison to even when you look back at older warbands, they feel like they've got a lot more flavour than these ones, but that's a personal thing.
And they do still manage to do that, what's always called a classic GW trait of having lots of layers of skin and leather, and then you suddenly can't work out which one is where, and they kind of disappear into each other. So I'm not overly impressed with the thing. I never like saying that because I always want to love the models, but these didn't really do it for me.
So now we're going to go on to all of the really crunchy numbers. They are a 4-fighter warband. GW kind of previewed that bit already.
Yep, they're quite accurate, but they're pretty weak.
Yeah, they're 2 damage max across the whole warband, even when inspired.
Yeah, and they have no inbuilt rune marks. So there's no way of doing anything else other than just hitting people for, at the most, 2 damage.
And when uninspired, 3 of the fighters are only on 1 dodge, which means you're pretty fragile.
But the most exciting thing about them possibly is that they have the power to manipulate the objective deck.
So a quick look at the fighters. They are pretty much all 4 wounds except for, I can never remember the name, so Asphalt, I'm going to call him from now on.
Yep.
With the crossbow, he's 3 wounds for reasons for balance.
Yep, and then to go with that, they're all 2, 2, 2, 1 on the glory front. Most of them are 2, but the Asphalt is only 1.
4 move across the board as well on them all.
Yep, and that stays for when they inspire. They don't get any extra movie. A couple of them pick up flight.
I wonder if it's just because they've got no shoes, they can't run around very much because there's all the pebbles on the floor. Ow! It's like when you're trying to go down the beach.
Ow!
Exactly. Their war scroll is very busy and also very empty at the same time. It's all about one thing, which is prophecy.
Yeah, there's a lot of text, and you think, oh my goodness, there's a lot going on there. But actually, it all pertains to just one thing. So there's no remembering to take off tokens or any of that stuff. Remembering abilities throughout the game. The whole war scroll drives the warband, and it drives their inspiration as well. They have a prophecy mechanic, which they can do in two times. They can do it at the start of each battle round, and they can do it whenever they've made a successful attack action.
Yeah, they do it at the beginning in the first turn of the battle round, so it happens at the beginning of the turn once you've already decided who's going first.
But basically what you do is you roll 4 dice and then you look at the results and you compare the results to the little table that's on the card.
Yes, you have your Ritual of Prophecy table, which has a whole bunch of stuff. Basically, if you roll doubles, that's what you're after in this game. So if you get double swords, you go onto another table and see what that does. Double hammers, same table. Assists, single or double assists, or combination of them. Yes, and it's not double and single assists anymore. It's obviously flanked and surrounded, but you can either have flanked and surrounded, or flanked or surrounded, but you get the point. If you roll 3 of the same symbol, you also go to that table and you can pick one. And if you get 4 of the same symbol, you can pick 2 of the items on there as well.
Which has not happened to us yet. Nope. Pete, you haven't mentioned crits.
I haven't mentioned crits because crits are wild.
Wild crits!
Wild crits!
So, I mean, you never roll crits, so you wouldn't know what happens. But basically, when you roll crits, when you make your prophecy roll, you can choose them to be anything you want. So that does include, we think, it perhaps needs a bit of clarification, but we think that would mean if you've got 2 hammers and a crit, that would count as 3 hammers. It's not clear, but I think a crit converts to any symbol, and therefore if you've rolled 2 of anything and a crit, then it basically counts to 3 of anything.
Yeah, so I'm sure when other people read this, they're going, well, that's obviously it, and I think it is fairly obvious in the intention, but the wording is, as always with GW, there's room for that crowbar, and thus people will start to pry, so it will need an errata or an FAQ.
I'm pretty sure that it is to be interpreted that way. If you remember about 10 minutes ago, I mentioned that this does trigger their Inspire condition. There are 3 things on the card. So there's the Foretold Slaughter, the Foretold Wisdom, and the Foretold Protection. If you roll for Foretold Wisdom with hammers,
2 hammers, or a hammer and a crit, or 2 crits that you make hammers,
or 3 or something, and then pick it. But all the various ways. If you get Foretold Wisdom, then you can inspire a fighter. But there's a little extra thing to that. You can't do it on one of those rolls at the beginning of the turn. It has to be after a successful attack action. So basically, if one of your fighters hits another fighter and does damage to them, then you can do the prophecy. If you then get hammers, you can inspire them. And you may think that's quite convoluted. There are a lot of steps in there.
And you'd be right.
And it's the number of steps which I think leads to the weakness in the warband.
And that weakness is based on the fact that to inspire a fighter, you first need to attack with an uninspired fighter, and they're not incredibly accurate uninspired.
No, very few fighters in the game start out accurate when they're uninspired, and so you're looking at making an attack and it having to succeed while you're uninspired, which nobody ever... Well, I try to avoid doing that as much as I possibly can. They do have a 4-sword 1 damage attack in the warband, so she's fairly easy to inspire. She's the easiest one to inspire, I would say, but mostly it's 2 hammers or 3 swords, and even poor old Ashfort is only 3 swords and 2 swords on his 2 attacks. So you have to hit in the first place, which... with the new crit rule is harder these days. You often don't hit. And then if you do hit, then you have to roll hammers as well. So you've got 2 opportunities for what I would say is sort of slightly negative experience. If you're having a game where you can't hit, you just can't inspire, which feels bad. And then if you finally do hit, you're like, oh great, I can inspire somebody. Oh god, I've rolled 2 single assists or something.
2 swords, or whatever. And also, once that fighter's hit and inspired, you then need to go and attack with another fighter who's uninspired, who's suboptimal, to then go and try and inspire them.
Because you must inspire the one who's done the attack. It's not like the Jaws where you can ping it about, and depending on who you inspire, who you choose, you must inspire the fighter's attack. So that does even mean if you've had to charge, your inspired fighter, although they have now gone to 2 dodge because they all inspire to 2 dodge, they're basically just standing there waiting to be hit, and you can't do anything with them. And maybe you be fortunate enough that somebody's moved next to you and you can use them again, but probably in the first round certainly you've had to charge, and then the inspire fighter is out of action really until the beginning of the next turn, and then you have to, like Pete said, you have to then try and attack with another fighter who isn't inspired. Then you have the same problem. So you've inspired your 4-sword attack. In fact, this is pretty much exactly what happened in that game. I inspired the 4-sword fighter in the first turn, I think. And then she just stood there waiting for something else to happen, and then I completely missed with all the others. So in the second round, I attacked with the 4-sword fighter. She hit again, but I couldn't inspire anybody, and so they were still uninspired. So then when I attacked with them, then they still remained uninspired. So that's not ideal.
So you might have gathered from all of that we're not a massive fan so far of the warband and their inspiration mechanic. But what do the other prophecy table things do? If you roll 2 swords, you get a crit grievous on your next attack.
Foretold Slaughter, I don't think it's that good. No. I mean, it's all right, but the other problem is you have to remember that you've got it, and I'm terrible at that.
Yep.
I know that's my fault rather than the game's fault, but you do have to remember that you've got crit grievous, and similarly you have to remember your foretold protection. Should you roll assists, then in that case you get to re-roll a save dice in the next attack. It is the next attack, so if they don't attack you, it carries over until the next.
It's not into the next turn, it's just the next attack. And this does open up to a little bit of GW typical woolliness in that what happens if on my turn I make an attack and I roll single assists, so I get the foretold protection. You then do something on your turn, you completely ignore me, you don't attack me, and then on my next turn I attack again, I hit again, and I rolled another double assists. Well, now, does that double up? Can I re-roll 2 defense dice? Possibly.
If you get foretold slaughter, does that override it? I don't think that does.
No.
But I don't think foretold protection stacks.
No.
It's not clear.
It's not clear, and again, there's enough room in there for the crowbar, so it will need another errata just to clarify how that's intended to work, which is a little bit annoying.
What is clear, and this sometimes isn't clear on War Scrolls, what is clear is that the protection and the slaughter don't carry over into a new round. So if you did it on your last attack of round 1, you wouldn't have it in round 2, it does say, until the end of the battle round.
Which does mean that you generally favour going first, because then you get the roll right at the very start, which would hopefully give you a crit grievous, and then on your 4th go you'll hopefully get some assist, which will give you the defense, so when your opponent attacks you on that last turn you've got something in there. One thing that is quite nice is that with Foretold Wisdom you can obviously look at the top card on your objective deck, and you can then decide after you've looked at it whether you want to place it back on the top or put it on the bottom. Now, because this happens directly after you've made a successful attack, if you happen to have a surge in hand which triggers off of a successful attack, you can choose the order in which you do those, because they're all surges. You choose which order you play them in, so you could look at your objective first and go, oh, that's tasty, I'll leave that on top, so when I score this one I know I'll pick that up. Or you could look at it and go, oh, that's annihilation, I don't want that one, I shall put that to the bottom.
Yeah, I think that's what this Warband is potentially good for. It's for Annihilation. Obviously, is a bit of a iffy card, and there's a few others if you wanted to try and play them with Edge of the Knife. There's the Trial of the Tempered, and there are times when you definitely don't want it, and this gives you a small chance of being able to put it to the bottom of the deck. And as Pete said, potentially you could, because of the ordering of things, you could potentially switch out for a card that you then score, which would be great.
One thing we haven't talked about yet is the inspired side of these cards, because sometimes they do inspire.
Yeah, sometimes they do, but I have to say, not a great deal happens when they do inspire.
No.
So the boss, Kerner, goes up to an extra hammer, so she's rolling 3 hammers, 2 damage, which is not to be sneezed at. But like I say, there's no innate way of getting extra damage onto her. It's just an extra hammer, basically. Yeah,
that's all she gets, really. All the other fighters go up to 2 dodge when they're inspired, which makes them a little bit more survivable, but no more survivable than, a Git, maybe, or somebody.
Yeah. Or some of Borgits, who just start on 2 dodge.
Yeah. Obviously, their wounds all stay the same across the board, and their bounty doesn't change at all. It's mostly just their attack profiles that slightly alter. Yeah. Tarzia, for example, goes to 2 hammers, 2 damage with that range 2.
Kryta picks up an extra damage, so she's 4 swords, 2 damage, so she could end up being, depending on what you're going on, what you're building, she could end up being your MVP, because 4 swords, if you can get some supports in, is pretty solid. And then Ashfeld, he's your range, so he's got some utility, but he only ever does 1 damage.
Yeah.
So it's not very much utility.
It's not massively impressive once you compare them to a lot of other warbands. We do have a big swathe of warbands that we were looking at and comparing them to, and most other warbands just seem to have slightly more impressive stats. If you've got like Dagok, for example, when he inspires, he goes to 3 hammers, 3 damage flat, so he can get up to 4 damage on his attack, which is pretty terrifying, and he gets a ranged attack version as well, which boss doesn't.
No, there's no extra range there. Kagra's Ravagers are quite comparable. Kagra inspires, she's got exactly the same. She's got a 2 hammer, 2 damage attack, but that inspires to have Grievous. She's even got a range 2 attack as well, which also has Grievous. So, she can be doing range 2 hammers, 2 damage, which is not to be sneezed at.
Looking at Duval, for example, as another leader, he starts on 3 hammers and 1 shield, and he's a little bit slower, but who cares about speed, really? When he inspires, he does stay on 1 shield, but he gains up the same speed, and he goes to 4 hammers and 2 damage, so he gets really accurate.
Yeah, so we've had a look at the 4 fighter warbands. They just feel a little bit underpowered, considering how difficult it is to inspire them. Ilthari probably doesn't really beat them much on stats, but
more of them do start on shields to start with. They lack a little bit on defense, but their stats just get better.
Their stats get better, but also they're much easier to inspire.
You're putting cards under your war scroll, and you're just putting tokens on each turn, and if you hit people and stuff, then you gain even more, so you can inspire quicker. But there's not a lot your opponent can do to stop you inspiring them at a decent pace, whereas with the Knives of the Crone, your dice will decide whether you win or not.
So it's a little bit comparable to Jaws there, because they're dependent on your opponent attacking you and getting the snapback. There are other ways to do it as well, but so they can sometimes be tricky to inspire, but they're just much better to start off with. They're just more accurate. So I think they're both offensive warbands, I think, and I'd probably be inclined to take the Jaws. And if you think at Borgit's, they've got an extra fighter, but Borgit himself starts on 2 hammers, 2 damage with Grievous, and he's got 2 shields.
And he starts on 2 shields as well, and all he has to do to inspire is delve.
Yeah, flip an objective. So I mean, he's not perfect. He's only got 3 wounds. But he's really solid. Then you've got Uglug to back that up, who comes with Cleave, and he
goes to 2 shields as well, and inspired, and he inspires just by delving an treasure token.
Exactly, and the little ones, they're all 2 dodge straight away.
Yeah.
So I feel like the Crones are underpowered.
I feel like they either need to be slightly more accurate to help with their inspiration, or they need to start 2 dodge to give them a bit more chance to survive a little longer to get inspired. Overall, they don't feel like they've got enough there. And with all these warbands, when we're comparing stats, that's only one element of it. You obviously look at the War Scroll, and their War Scroll maybe gives them a crit Grievous. It maybe gives them a defense reroll, which doesn't add a huge amount on to their defensibility, especially if they're on 1 dodge.
Yeah.
Especially if they're on 1 dodge. And you potentially get the chance to look at an objective card, which could be useful in a few situations. But all the other warbands have got lots of other abilities to use as well. I mean, you've got like Dagok, he's got just the 3 stabs. You can just sit there pinging damage away on people all the time. Kagra, they've got their abilities to push people and get extra dice on an attack or defense, all those kind of things. There's just a lot of extra stuff going on that all the other warbands have that they don't.
They're quite dicey as a result, which I would expect them to be, because I think all the Daughters of
the
Cain,
Dark Elves, Daughters of Cain
warbands are all quite dicey. So that's thematic, but I just feel they're not consistent enough to make better. And of course, whereas I know that some, like Harry, one of our patrons, made a really good build with the arena. You could do stuff with the available card pool to make them quite reliable and keep hitting.
And his deck was good because he only needed to wound 1 person all game. And that was like, if he did that, he knew he could score everything in his deck.
I'm just not sure you can do that sort of thing with these.
No.
I'm sure people better than us with the game will turn them into something better,
phenomenal,
and good.
Maybe.
But so far, we haven't played loads of games. They just feel a bit underpowered. In the first round, you could easily, I mean, missing with all of them would probably be unlikely unless you're Pete, but you could easily only hit with 1, or hit with 2, but only roll 1 set of hammers and only have 1 fighter inspire going into the second round,
or a pair of hammers,
which isn't going to make you feel good.
It's not going to know. No. And this is one of the things that GW's warband design always irks me on, is they still have this belief that, if you roll a 6, then you get to roll another one, and if you get another 6, you get to roll another one. And it's that thing that if things are going well, they go really well, like with the Jaws as well. And if they go badly, they go really badly. So like the Jaws attack, they've got the special ability where you can ping someone. If you kill someone, you get to keep it and you get to do it again. But if you miss or you don't kill him, well, you're stuffed. You only get 1 go then.
Exactly. Or, if you survive the attack, if you save the attack that the person goes, you get to wound them back. Oh, and you get to inspire, which is like a big middle finger to the person
triple whammy.
Tried to attack. I mean, imagine trying to attack these, because they've only got 1 range attack. So trying to inspire these guys against the Jaws is like, oh yes, thank you very much.
I've tried it. There's a video on it on our Patreon, and it was horrific.
I was going to say that right at the top, and I completely forgot. All of our preliminary work is on Patreon, so if you want to go and see how we came up with the ideas for this video and how it all worked, you can see them if you join our Patreon.
Yeah, there's also access to our Discord on there as well, so that's another little bonus. And if you come to any of our tournaments, you get a discount on tickets there too.
Ooh, and you get to talk to us all the time.
One thing we haven't mentioned is which decks to pair this warband with.
I think being a martial warband that you want to try and inspire by hitting things, you want to improve your accuracy, and the out-and-out best one for that is probably Blazing Assault. You'd probably be all right with Reckless Fury in Rivals, I would think.
Yeah, possibly. They've got some cards in that could be useful for them in that situation, but because they're so fragile and brittle, if a lot of your fighters die early on, then a lot of those cards then become quite moo.
Yeah, they have got a range attack, which helps some of them because you can attack from far away. I don't think you're going to want to play these with Emberstone Sentinels. You definitely don't want to play them with Pillage because you don't want to have any stagger. You don't want to be stagger when you've only got one dodge. And they just haven't got the numbers, I don't think, to play Pillage.
They also struggle a bit with Edge of the Knife because they all start on 4 wounds, so you're not going to get them temped very easily.
I did try them with Edge of the Knife and it was a disaster. But it was into quite a hard counter, but it was a disaster. Possibly somebody might be able to do some ping deck shenanigans with them, but I'm not. That person ain't me.
No.
I guess you could probably stack it with maybe some harder to score objectives, more higher scoring objectives, and put them at the bottom. But it's not that reliable, the shuffle through, because you can only do it when you roll the hammers, and then it doesn't matter if you pick a. Basically, it happened to me. I didn't get Annihilation. It was a good card, and then I drew that, and that was good. And then the next card was Annihilation. And I didn't see that, and that was in my hand, and I was stuck with it.
Yeah. So overall, whilst we're thinking that Blazing Assault is pretty much a given, that's kind of a default for any more aggro-y deck, and we can't really think of a good Nemesis combination that isn't Blazing Assault and Countdown to Cataclysm.
So I'll go out on a limb and say Blazing Assault, Countdown to Cataclysm.
So if you take two of the best decks, they might go well with that.
They might be all right, yeah.
Maybe. Which isn't really great when you say it like that. So let us know what you thought about this video about the Knives of the Crone. Do you think we're talking utter toss, or do you think, like us, they're an absolute lemming? So don't forget to click that like button.
And click that subscribe button.
And don't forget to leave a comment below to let us know what you think about the Knives of the Crone.
And we'll see you somewhere soon in the Underworld.